DJ.
Here, lizard. It's the almighty King Cooper, chameleon at a color-changing lizard, the mixtape messiah. Please stand for the ghetto national anthem. Let's go. Man, forget what them boys is talking about. I'm true, man. Your riding swings, your gripping grain. I do, man. Your candy red, your candy blue, your popping trunk, your jamming screw. Don't know about you, but I'm true, man. Forget what them boys is talking about. I'm true, man. Your riding swings, your gripping grain. I do, man. Your candy red, your candy blue, your popping trunk, your jamming screw. Don't know about you, but I'm true, man. Forget what these boys is talking about. We white boys dying and walk on.
Another week and another new podcast from the Great American Cast. I am Tanner Acebo, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Gary Lannister. Gary, what's going on this week, man?
Oh, so much. Some good, some bad, some involving Hulk Hogan's penis.
Yes, definitely. Hulk Hogan's penis or Terry Bollea's penis?
Both.
We'll talk about the Hulk Hogan-Gawker trial, which is, I'm sure, on the lips of every pro wrestling fan out there.
Let's just hope that Hulk Hogan's penis isn't on the lips of every fan, because you never know when a camera's rolling.
Yeah,
the moral of that story.
As Hulk or Terry found out himself. But, here we are. We continue to roll in to WrestleMania. We are approaching very rapidly Roadblock this Saturday night from Toronto, the WWE Network exclusive show that it almost seems like they are hyping more than WrestleMania, the granddaddy of them all at this point.
Yeah, it really does feel like it's kind of, to continue the automotive motif, it's faded into the rear view.
Yes.
You like that?
Cracked rear view with that.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, no, it's just, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to bridge the gap between now and WrestleMania with something that feels important and give us a March pay-per-view of sorts. And I think there's some good stuff that they're going to do on Roadblock. I think, in particular, when we run down the card, the Revival and Enzo and Cass, that's a pretty good way to get people exposed to Enzo and Cass. Although if you're watching on the network, you probably watch NXT too. But I don't know. It's definitely having them on the same roster as your big-time guys from Raw and SmackDown. I think that'll be good. I think that'll be a good way to warm people up for the Port Authority to get called up after Mania.
And the rumor is right now that Sami Zayn is going to be called, not going to be called up, he's already been called up, but Sami Zayn will work that show. We don't know as of right now what his role will be, and we're recording this on Wednesday night. So, we're pretty much, the TV's done unless they put some graphic package together for SmackDown coming out tomorrow night. But the SmackDown spoilers this week did not indicate anything concrete for Sami Zayn on Saturday night. But obviously, we're talking about Sami. Let's get right into some of the events of Raw this week. And, we got a list here, but let's start right out with talking about Sami Zayn. The fact that he's now, apparently, this is his main roster call-up. Mm-hmm. We saw him at the Royal Rumble this year. Obviously, we saw him last year challenging John Cena in his U.S. title open challenge, and that's when he ultimately injured his shoulder in his entrance there and had to get some surgery on it. But it certainly looks like they're going to do the same treatment as they did with Kevin Owens, where the call-up happens while you're still going to finish out the remainder of your NXT tapings, your NXT schedule, as it were. Because, again, this is something we'll talk about later as well, the long-term booking. NXT knows kind of what their long-term booking is, so they have the ability to say, okay, this guy's going to be done in this month. This guy's going to be done off NXT by the end of April. And then he'll be all set to be on the main roster.
But they say that, but if you look at the taping and some of the spoilers, I hate to read the spoilers for NXT, but I couldn't help myself with this, just because of all the new signings and all the rumors and Sami coming back. And, when you look ahead, there's really not anything necessarily that, so I can say as of the time this is going to air, Sami Zayn lost the 2 out of 3 falls match with Samoa Joe. Mm-hmm. I believe it was Joe got the muscle buster, Sami Zayn got a fall, and then Joe got the last one. And
that wraps up the story that they've told over several weeks of television,
Yeah.
going back to the triple threat match with Sammy and Joe and Baron Corbin. They both tapped him out. Then another inconclusive finish that took place, and now ultimately we're at this.
Yeah, absolutely. So then my question becomes, because he's now out of the title picture, and I don't see them reinserting him afterwards. I wonder what's going to happen in his match. Spoiler alert, with Nakamura. He's supposed to have a match with Nakamura at the TakeOver Dallas event.
As a guy who has constantly, I wouldn't say job, but I'd say put other people over in his feuds, I can see him losing this match clean, and that being his farewell.
Right, because it's usually how it goes, is when you're leaving the territory, you put someone over.
Sasha and Bayley from NXT Brooklyn, which we'll reference later in the show a little bit when we speak to our guest this week, but I feel like he loses clean. They give him the big send-off. It's at arguably their biggest show of the year, up to this point, obviously, but being WrestleMania weekend and everything. And he's going out clean to a guy that is legitimately one of the best in the world, and that instantly establishes him in NXT. If you have Shinsuke lose to Sami Zayn, as much as I'm a Sami Zayn mark, it doesn't make sense down the road. Sammy's going up to the main roster.
Right.
Shinsuke's going to stay in NXT.
Sammy will not be remembered for losing on the way out either.
No, he'll be remembered for that match he had with Adrian Neville for the NXT belt, which you and I watched that match together. I mean, other than being there in person when Bayley and Sasha wrestled and jumping out of my seat for the finish of that match, well, for many segments of that match, the false finishes and everything, but watching in your basement and the emotions that match brought out of us just in watching it live on TV, including leaping out of our seats when Sami Zayn won, and I think we even embraced. I mean, that was, and that match is going to be on the Best of NXT Volume 1, which they just announced some of the match listings for. But that match is what will always signify Sami Zayn NXT for me, because obviously we got right out of that huge angle where Kevin Owens betrayed him, powerbombed him on the apron. And that's just, majestic storytelling.
Absolutely. Yep.
Not to suck NXT's dick too much, but my God,
the way
they did that. So we have Sammy. He's on the main roster for the foreseeable future. I mean, he's a main roster guy now, and it's strange to think about, but I'm so very ready for it.
Absolutely.
And they so need it. The show opened with Shane McMahon coming out. And I mentioned it to you when we were watching it, and John Pollock mentioned it on Review of Raw this week. The deepest of Shane McMahon's song that we'd ever heard. That song played for at least 3 minutes, and it got to verses I didn't even know existed in the universe, but we got another Shane-Vince angle where Vince shadowed a picture of them, and he sent the security team out, rather, not the bodyguards, and Shane said, don't send them out. In short, he beat them all up. Huge babyface pop for Shane. They're really just making him look like he is the babyface going into WrestleMania. Roman Reigns continues to be off TV this week, and it almost seems like this match is getting the TV spots and the TV time that a main event match would get. They gave us the tease where right before Vince's music hit, the Undertaker bell hit when Shane was cutting a promo on the ring. Yeah. It just seems like they're leading the show off with it. They know that it's the biggest audience that's watching the show.
They revisit it at the top of every hour.
Every hour. I feel like that's the big match they're leading us to at Mania.
Well, and we were talking either last week or on the first edition. You brought up the point match order is going to affect the psychology of either match, depending on which one of those goes first.
Yes, I think it was the first episode. Where if you have Reigns beat Triple H. And then Undertaker beats Shane afterwards, it's all, what does it mean?
Right.
Or if you have Shane win before Roman and Triple H wrestled, it's a totally different thing because we all know that Roman Reigns is going to win the belt at WrestleMania.
Right.
If he doesn't win the belt, I will be 100% shocked, just as I was last year when they had Seth Rollins cash in. But there's nobody to cash in this year. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be Reigns winning the belt. But you have Undertaker win, and you have Reigns win, and it's kind of we're just out even again. You got a babyface champion, but Vince McMahon and the Authority stay in power.
Right.
So I almost feel like the Shane match has to end the show. However, they like to send people home happy. They like that big babyface ending or that big surprise ending. So if Shane and Taker go on last, you have to think that Shane wins or something. I still love the idea of Stone Cold Steve Austin coming out of nowhere and stunning Undertaker. I'm not going to get over it, people. He comes out, he stuns Undertaker as a final screw you to Vince, and Shane takes control of the company.
I mean, that would be absolutely amazing. And you can definitely have a great moment, too, with, like, if they start now and they start getting the rest of the roster involved in the story with Shane, when and if Shane wins, you can have one of those great moments like Starrcade 97, where everybody just comes out and they carry him around like Peter Gabriel.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. You know, the locker room empties out and you get that big babyface moment.
Because then it's about the company, it's not about the McMahons.
Sami Zayn when he beat Neville.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Exactly.
Those are the moments, and when you can create them organically, it means so much more than just carrying somebody around for the sake of fucking carrying them.
I will say, I hope that the security guard that looked like a buff Marco Rubio comes back. That was awesome.
Depends on his results in the coming week, I would suppose. We got our New Day and Y2 AJ match, and I said, I hope Chris Jericho. I hate this T-shirt, but I hope that he's wearing it and he wears it the whole match, so I don't have to look at his dad body. I was wrong. He took it off right before the match started. This was a hell of a match.
Holy shit!
This was a hell of a match, and it got good time. And you know, they told the story. The New Day are really, I don't know if I want to say they're undervalued as wrestlers, but they're so good on the mic that you almost forget that they're all very talented in the ring. Even Xavier Woods, who kind of doesn't wrestle a whole lot compared to Kofi and Big E in terms of the New Day storyline or whatever, the matches that they have. But I mean, these guys told a damn good match. It was a high level of in-ring work in this match.
I mean, that match definitely showed you how much they've all grown, all three of them. Xavier as a talker in a manager role. Kofi was always great, but I mean, it just continues to write that legacy. And Big E, that's the best Big E's ever looked. That was like sometimes, and I love him, but there are some times where he pulls off a move and I'm like, that looked like that hurt a fucking ton. And it just, he seemed super in control of everything. It was just a really kind of a phenomenal showcase for them. And of course, Styles and Jericho looked like $1 million fucking dollars. So
yeah. AJ Styles hit that. I don't even know what I'd call it. The springboard. It wasn't a scorpion death drop because it was Kofi's head that hit the other way.
Yeah.
But the backflip off the middle rope into like not even a neck breaker. I don't even know what I'd call it. But that move was incredible. And they showed the replay of it a couple times, and that's good on them. They don't always get that right, but when they get it right, we're willing to give them credit because they got that right. Production was there in that match, and there are a couple things coming out of this match. First off, we get the turn of Chris Jericho on AJ Styles after they lose clean to the New Day. The New Day, their thing has been winning matches by cheating for almost their whole reign, and even when they lost the belts, then got them back. Mm-hmm. Going back to their feud with Kid and Cesaro.
Yeah, yep.
As the weeks have gone on, and the merch, again, increasingly makes them look like baby faces. I don't know if you've seen the I think it's the next England tour or something, but they already have matches announced, and they're working against heels.
Who are they working against?
I think they're working against Sheamus and Rusev, maybe, on the next British tour. But they're working against heels, and they won this match clean. They did not cheat to win this match. They won it clean, and there can be nothing to be said about it. It was a big ending, clean, center of the ring. No, nothing. Are they almost transitioning them kind of sleekly or sneakily into baby faces without any of us noticing? They're over. Mm-hmm. The Chicago crowd did their chant. I know they're a bunch of smarks in Chicago, but they did their chant word for word. They got the Enzo Amore and Big Cass treatment.
Yep.
People like to see these guys, and they're not cheating anymore, and they haven't cheated for a little while, as I recall. So are they going to become babyface tag champs, and we're going to transition them into facing heels? We had that segment, obviously, at Fastlane, which was terrible. But
yes.
That felt like the turn, and we talked about it already on this show, but that felt like the babyface turn for them, and since that moment, they haven't healed. They didn't even talk trash about the Chicago fans.
That's true.
And they usually come out and get the cheap heat talking trash about the pro sports teams, and they didn't do that.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. And the only thing that's disappointing about them turning face is that we won't get to see them take on the Port Authority.
Yes.
What a fucking verbal joust that was going to be, Xavier Woods and Enzo.
It really was. But maybe now, looking back at it, and we can give them credit again, that's why the Port Authority didn't debut at Fastlane.
That's
because
true.
they were starting the transition of the New Day into baby faces. But out of this, Jericho turns heel. He hits the code breaker on AJ 3 times and then stuffs his shirt, or their shirt, I guess you could say, into his mouth. So this looks like the clear direction going into WrestleMania. Do you see them having something at Roadblock? They haven't said anything, obviously. If they have a match at Roadblock, does it totally compromise a potential match at WrestleMania?
I think at this point it does. You know, a lot of people's reaction when this was when this transpired is, fuck, this is continuing.
Yeah.
And purely because a lot of the blame, and not personally, but from what I've read and heard, is that it's Jericho. People just don't think he can keep up one-on-one with Styles, which is why everyone was excited for them as a tag team, because you got to figure AJ Styles can carry the load. He's a great hot tag. And I was very excited to see them potentially take the belts off of New Day.
Yeah, I was ready for that as well.
But yeah, so I don't think they should have a match at Roadblock. I avoid it at all costs, if you ask me. Swerve to avoid.
the Roadblock there.
On WWE, don't hit the potholes, you'll fuck up my suspension.
WWE, seek alternate routes.
WWE rideshare.
Divas tag match that we got on Monday this week. We're going into Mania. We know there's a triple threat match now. Becky and Sasha are still teaming together, despite the fact that there's triple threat coming up. I hate this idea so much, but they had Becky knock on Sasha's door. We knew it was coming out of this. They're tag teaming again in a pay-per-view rehash, because that's what WWE loves to do when they don't know how to advance a story, but to just, well, we know they're in triple threat match in some weeks, so we gotta just have filler TV time and have Charlotte come out and beat him out. Beat him up. Come out and beat him up. That's what happened. Nothing match. Bank statement. Win. Charlotte beatdown angle at the end. This does nothing. This just basically hits you over the head again. Hey, they're having a triple threat match. It doesn't give you any specific stories or any details of you could have Becky in a singles match. You could have Sasha in a singles match, both tuning up as individuals. Maybe that'll come in the coming weeks because they do have a lot of time to fill, but I just don't. Them teaming together again after we know that now they're facing off in the triple threat match against Charlotte, I think it holds. There's nothing in it. There's nothing for me as a fan to buy them as a tag team. I just don't know. I just don't understand why they're doing this again.
No, I'm with you. Especially because, as we've talked about before with alignment, it's this idea that you've got Charlotte is your purebred heel.
Yes.
Becky, true babyface. Sasha walks the line. So the more you have any two of them together, it muddies that alignment even further. Like, you want to be really clear about that, because if it's two bright-eyed and bushy-tailed babyfaces going into it against Charlotte, it doesn't have the same intrigue, because you can predict that they'll team up. You can predict that, they're going to work together to do what's right and just, and it's like Becky wants to win for integrity, Sasha wants to win for Sasha, Charlotte doesn't want to lose.
I'm not a huge fan of Gary just killed the fly.
1-0 for flies tonight.
I'm not a huge fan of how they do the distractions.
No.
But this is something very easily where you could do a bit where Becky's in a singles match, Sasha's music hits, Bayley gets distracted. I'm keep saying Bayley. God, Becky. My God, I'm on the Sasha Bayley train so much. Just watched WWE 24 take over Brooklyn, and just ingrained in my mind. Becky's in a singles match against God knows who. Let's say it's Summer Rae, because we saw her on this week's Raw. Sasha's music hits. Becky gets distracted. Summer goes for a roll-up. Becky gets out of it. Boom, disarmer. Becky still wins. And then she's like, why'd you come out and try to distract me? Boom. Next week, Sasha's facing somebody. Becky's music hits. You can do the same nonsense. You can even maybe have Sasha lose. Because if Sasha is going to ultimately win, you can have her lose by the distraction. But this is the problem with the fact that they use the distraction finishes too much.
Right.
Is that when you use them in storyline to actually create a point rather than just hinging on them or falling back on them, it loses all credibility and it loses everything out of it.
Yeah,
Because I think distractions could work in this. It's a triple threat. There are 3 angles here. I just feel like that because Becky, like you said, is the true baby face. Sasha's the tweener. You could really have some mind games happening there, and it's not happening.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
they have time. Maybe give them the benefit of the doubt.
We'll see.
Ha! Wink, wink.
Yeah,
we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's talk about Ryback, Steve LeClair's favorite guy in underpants.
Yeah.
He has the bit with Kalisto after Kalisto had wrestled against Prince Pretty, who we love.
Yes.
A 4-minute match, but still seeing him on our TV, even if it's just for 4 minutes,
I hope he gets added to that IC title match.
Yeah, the multi-man.
Belongs.
Yeah, he's a great fit for that. He's like a better Dolph Ziggler at this point, and we'll talk about Dolph Ziggler in a little bit.
Yeah.
But Ryback cuts the promo on Kalisto backstage. He takes on the members of the Social Idiots again. You're trying to get Ryback over as kind of a heel now. You're slowly turning him. You're opposite of the New Day right now. He's not doing the chant that was over. He's not pumping the arm and doing the feed me more. The crowd's there's no chant so you're making him a heel. He's wearing black. You're making him a heel. Why do we care about him beating members of the Social Outcasts? What makes him legit beating these guys, even if it is in 2 minutes? Are they just trying to Bill Goldberg him, where he comes out, destroys a jobber in 2 minutes? What
Honestly,
are they doing
dude,
here?
I know we all joke about it, but it really does feel like they are trying to build the next coming of Bill Goldberg down to the attire.
The attire is the same,
and he rips off a lot of Punk moves because he's not going to let that die. But
yeah, especially what he did on Monday night.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, he knew what he was doing. And
let it go, dude. You are still employed by the company.
Yeah.
He's not. He doesn't give a fuck. Just stop it. There's no moral victory for either of them here.
So he comes out, he destroys Curtis Axel after just a terrible promo.
Rob Axel explodes!
Yeah, the former partners facing off. And no mention of it from the broadcast team. Again, the company that thinks we don't pay attention to the product that we watch every week.
We just want to see the meat slapping together.
It was the beef on beef. So Ryback's obviously in the mix for the U.S. title. If he's not in the Andre the Giant Battle Royal at WrestleMania, I'll be really upset. If he's in some sort of singles match, I'll be very upset. He doesn't deserve it. And that's not me talking about him as a guy.
Right.
That's me talking about him as a wrestler. That's a waste of a spot. That could be somebody else.
But what kind of match is he going to have with fucking Kalisto?
Yeah, you can't. Who's
great, but
if it's a multi-man for the U.S. belt, I could see it. But you can't do a bunch of they might gimmick themselves right out of this, dude.
Yeah.
If you're going ladder or a ladder match or a multi-man match for the IC belt, you've got Hell in a Cell, you've got Street Fight. The Triple H Roman Reigns match isn't going to be a clean Triple H is using a chair. Ring the bell, it's a DQ. That match is going to have some shit that happens in it that's not legal.
Yeah.
So
ref bumps will be taken.
Yeah, ref bumps. I wouldn't be surprised if he used the fucking sledgehammer right in front of a ref.
Yeah.
Would not be surprised at this point. Mention Dolph in the context of Tyler Breeze being a better current Dolph. Dolph mentions his whole Survivor Series from a couple of years ago, which again the company really seems like they've forgotten about. The fact that the Authority was abolished and that Sting came out and won a true victory a la Sting defeating the NWO, which I really feel like was kind of a Vince, not necessarily taking that idea, but being like, yeah, Sting can beat our bad guys too. He's so petty about stuff like that. Then he had Sting lose to Triple H anyway at Mania 31. Spoiler alert. But Ziggler's talking to Steph. They did this angle where he tweeted something and then took the tweet down. He mentions how he won at Survivor Series. Doesn't mention Sting's aid that he received. And he's in a 3-on-1 handicap match against members of the League of Nations. And I'm sitting there and I said to you, okay, he'll pin Barrett, then he'll lose. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And not only did he pin Barrett after a super kick, not even a famous or ultimately a zigzag. And then he takes a brogue kick. But what is Dolph Ziggler now? Where is he? Because as recently as a year and a couple of months ago, he was your Intercontinental Champion. And he was holding a mid-card belt. And ever since then, he's challenged for it a couple of times, but he hasn't won it. And he really seems like he's just slipping down the card. Like he's a couple of steps above the social outcast at this point.
Yeah, which is why, like, when I thought the original gimmick was going to be lose to the outcast and you have to join him, I was very excited. I was like, that's new direction for him. He's
like
the cool dude
so
with
much.
all these fucking dorks. But no, I have no idea what they're doing. And he's sitting there telling Steph, I got the, like, that whole thing about reminding her that he got the authority kicked out of power, that's like bringing up that you had herpes, you beat herpes, and they flared up again.
Exactly.
Like, just don't say anything.
To herpes' face.
To the person you gave herpes
yeah,
to.
exactly.
Like,
yeah.
just stop. Quit while you're ahead.
So that match happened, and Dolph is definitely going to be an entrant in that Battle Royal match. There's no other way around it. They're building nothing for him.
Or is he going to be in
Miz.
the multi-man... Are he and Miz going to be in the Intercontinental title match? I would rather that be a straight-up singles match or a ladder match.
Yeah.
Kind of have your shades of Razor and HBK.
Yeah. I think,
and then the multi-man is for the U.S.
Yeah, I think that if they're gonna do a multi-man match for one of those secondary belts, and I'm a Sami Zayn mark, so take this with a grain of salt, but Sami Zayn's first pay-per-view match shouldn't be meshed in with a bunch of guys everybody already knows. He should be given a chance to stand out in his own. And him and Kevin Owens can tear that fucking place down, especially if it was a ladder match, a 2-man ladder match. I mean, you look back at all the stuff they did in Ring of Honor together, and beyond that. But the Ring of Honor is where those hellacious fucking, to quote Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh goddamn, kid.
All those matches that they had. I think that's really an opportunity for a show stealer in what technically would be an undercard match. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about rounding out this show and trying to get as many people into Jerry World as possible. I think there's a lot of intrigue, especially in a place like Texas where the indies have roots, in people seeing a Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens ladder match straight up for the IC belt and giving that thing 20 to 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's a stronger match than throwing Miz, Dolph, Neville, and Tyler Breeze, I think, has come up a couple times. Yeah. It's better than throwing those four with Ryback and Kalisto for the U.S. title. That's an appropriate cluster. That'll be a really great match. Everyone in that's a pretty decent worker for the most part.
The problem would be is what would the gimmick in that match be if Sami and Owens were to have a ladder match?
That's true.
What's another? I mean, they can't do a chamber and a Hell in a Cell.
No, yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like maybe a fatal 4-way for the U.S. belt could work. But then again, that's another gimmick match, and we don't want to oversee. And we're just fantasy booking this year,
right?
But even in fantasy booking, you don't want to have too many tropes.
Yeah, whatever they come up with will be infinitely less satisfying. So,
yeah,
you know.
So you could have a fatal 4-way with Kalisto and Ryback and Ziggler and Breeze, and you could put Miz into the Battle Royal. Mm-hmm. And give him some heel comedy spots or something like that where he thinks he eliminated somebody or whatever and he gets tossed out. But I feel like, again, going back to the Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens thing, Sami Zayn, his first pay-per-view match has to be legit. He has to shine in it, and even if he loses, he has to get over with the main roster audience because he is one of your true baby faces. He is... And I'm not a huge fan of John Cena, the wrestler, even though in the last year he's grown so much of it. But he's your next Cena in terms of a pure babyface.
Right.
Pure babyface.
Yeah.
Because Roman Reigns is a badass babyface, and Dean Ambrose is a crazy babyface. But Sami Zayn is a cut and dry, clean cut babyface.
Yeah. Yep.
And before we head to break here, Ambrose and Triple H. You have Dean take on Bray Wyatt in the main event of Raw this week. We knew what the outcome was going to be before it even fucking went to the end. Obviously, Dean Ambrose can't win a singles match. Unless by disqualification because he's getting the shit beat out of him. And then we have this stare down between Wyatt and Triple H for a bit, which, to me, watching it almost harkened back to territory-style wrestling, where it was like maybe we're teasing you of something that could come down the line, or maybe nothing will come of this, but either way, we know you want it, so we're going to let you bask in this for a while. And they did a nice stare down there. And that's got to be cool for Triple H, because Bray Wyatt's an NXT guy, so, I mean, we all know that Triple H loves his NXT guys, and that Ambrose is a Triple H guy. So how fitting was it that Triple H sold Dean Ambrose's dirty deeds that he gave him to close the show like he'd been shot with a shotgun?
Unbelievable.
What a sell by Triple H. The face down, not moving.
That big old beak squished into the canvas.
And Ambrose doesn't necessarily stand tall going into Roadblock, but he crouches tall.
I think I tweeted out from the account he hunches tall to end the show.
So we got, again, Ambrose holding the belt that we all know that he won't hold, but we at least get visuals of him holding it, harkening back to the dusty finish they did at Elimination Chamber, and then the finish of Money in the Bank as well, which, going back to that match, my God, did I love that match. Mm-hmm. Seth Rollins, come back. We love you so much.
Yes.
Speedy recovery. We know you're training back again. God. We didn't know how good we had it.
You and Randy and Cesaro and Cena, Nikki.
Get well soon, guys. Get well soon. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break here on the Great American Cast. When we come back, well, we got a couple things to talk about. We're going to talk about NXT a little bit. We're going to talk about the Hulk Hogan-Gawker trial and what we've learned so far about what's going on in Terry Bollea's trousers. Can't believe I just said that.
He's got a 24-inch python in there.
Yeah. We're back in just a second on the Great American Cast.
Well, what should I do, Jimmy? I'm desperate.
You're desperate?
You better charm that snake.
Charm the snake, what the fuck does that mean?
It means reinvent your image in a desperate attempt at relevance. Christopher Cross?
You gotta be smart, you gotta be cool, you gotta keep a straight face when you're playing the fool, you gotta wear a smile when you're breaking the rules, you gotta charm that snake now, baby. Charm that snake now, baby. Hey, we ain't all good.
We'd like to thank some of our personal heroes, the men behind Yacht Rock, for giving us our bumper music here. And of course, the great Christopher Cross.
Often
for
imitated.
writing that piece of music. We love you, JD Risner. Thank you for all you've done for us.
Keep the fire.
God, we could go so deep into Yacht Rock.
Oh my God, yeah.
We won't for you. We'll save that for next week's show.
You should watch Yacht Rock,
Yes.
and then we can turn this into a Yacht Rock podcast.
Sailing the Seas of Smooth. Tanner Acebo, Gary Lannister back here on the Great American Cast. We're about to be joined by our special guest for the week. But first, before we do so, the Hulk Hogan-Gawker defamation suit, the trial has begun this week, and thankfully it's being live streamed on the internet to give us some incredible sound bites. If you don't know what's going on with this, Hulk Hogan had sex with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife, and Bubba the Love Sponge filmed it. And Gawker released it. And Hulk Hogan was not pleased with it. And I've only watched about 25 minutes of the trial so far. I watched some yesterday, which was Tuesday. And it was Hulk Hogan on the stand being cross-examined by Gawker's lawyer. And I'll start with this. As I told somebody earlier today, I don't like Hulk Hogan. I really don't. He held a lot of young talent down for a long time. But there is something to be said about what happened to him here. And I think that he should win. I think he will win. But watching the cross-examination yesterday, and more importantly, hearing the cross-examination, the guy has been doing publicity for far longer than I've been alive. You and I both, almost combined. He the Gawker lawyer, whose name escapes me, and I'm not going to look it up because I really don't care, is been playing a lot of interviews with Hogan on, like Howard Stern and Bubba the Love Sponge's show, and publicity with him and his family and all this stuff. And the topics of conversation are pretty raunchy. And basically what Gawker's getting at here is, oh, you've done raunchy stuff in the past, blah, blah, blah. We're going to connect it to this being not an issue and not a violation of your rights necessarily. And obviously what came out of this video is Hulk Hogan using the racist slurs, and now why he's out of a job at WWE, which is, I believe, why this suit came up. I don't think if he still has a job at WWE, he'd be suing them.
Well, I do think that they brought a suit in 2012 when it happened.
Oh, okay.
And it was also against Bubba the Love Sponge. And
who's refusing to testify in this
exactly.
case as well.
It's all super complicated, and to your point, I don't like Hulk Hogan. I don't like Terry Bollea. I think, the character, the man, both did some really shitty things that hurt the business, hurt people, hurt families. Took a lot of bread off a lot of young talents' tables when they're trying to just help their families. All that is to say, the fact that the Gawker lawyers have been trying to use the Aaron Andrews associations. Now, they were told that they may not submit that as evidence or to help them make a point because they don't want to confuse the different legal precedents set there and what they're trying to do in this.
Different cases, different everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're trying not to confuse the jury too much. But those associations get raised whether you like to or not. And the people who were going after her were saying, well, her star has risen. Look how high profile she is now as a result of having her privacy terribly violated by some asshole. And that's what they're arguing with Hulk Hogan, is that, well, he was out of a job and he's profiting off of this. This is what he wants. I don't understand. And that's a bunch of bullshit, quite frankly, because
it's not.
Whole thing is being positioned as privacy rights versus freedom of the press. And okay, I understand, as someone who writes and directs and all that stuff, I understand freedom of speech and freedom of expression and all that. It's very important. But at the same time, you are destroying this man. You're kicking him when he's down. Whether he knew the tape was being made or not, whether he wanted it to get out or not, you posted it without his consent, and you profited via page views from this man's wrinkled old ass.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Sponge. So
it's probably the nicest thing who's ever been said.
Yeah.
Well, now the ex-Mrs. Sponge.
Exactly.
But not to make light of this. I mean, there's a lot of money on the line here.
But it's all bad people.
Yeah.
And, we come down on Hogan's side in this, but fuck Gawker, fuck Hulk Hogan, fuck Bubba the Love Sponge. Don't fuck his wife. Hulk Hogan already did. Like, it's a mess. They all suck. We should launch that courtroom into the sun.
Yeah, it's all bad here, and we're able to watch it all unfold live, and we get this incredible soundbite of Hulk Hogan talking about the size of his dick. I think it was even on Bubba the Love Sponge's show, and you get the soundbite of Terry Bollea saying Hulk Hogan's penis is 10 inches long. Terry Bollea's penis is not. I can assure you that. And the fact that he's having to differentiate this stuff on the stand really doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. He could have been on that radio show and said that his penis was 10 inches long. And that shouldn't affect the fact that several years later, Gawker released a video that was taken, as far as we know, without his consent of him having sex with somebody.
Well, and I don't say, please know that this is not in the context of being glib or a joke, but if this were a sexual assault case, the size of his penis is relevant to the crime being committed and what's at stake. But
in this case,
he was.
It's nothing.
I don't know. The whole thing's pretty sordid and dubious, and
this thing could take as long as 3 weeks. They're saying.
What the fuck is going to take 3 weeks about this?
So we'll probably be updating it next week, and maybe even in the following week. But again, just a couple days in, and for the first time ever, I guess I could say I'm pulling for Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
NXT, they're gearing up for obviously the big WrestleMania show coming up. a big show this week as Austin Aries makes his debut, I guess, in terms of on NXT television.
Yeah, not sure what's going on there, who he's facing, or if he's even got a match, because I think when I perused the spoilers, he had one match that I noticed. But I don't know.
But again, we know what they're setting him up for, and I think it's been made official as of this recording that he's going to be facing Baron Corbin at NXT TakeOver Dallas. I'm sorry if I'm getting that. Yeah,
it's pronounced Dallas.
Delay. Yeah, it's a silent S. But NXT continues to just keep on rolling, continuing to create stars, and we'll see some NXT stars that we've mentioned earlier. But at Roadblock this weekend, don't see the titles changing hands because Enzo and Big Cass have to be coming up to the roster soon. Yeah. Because the time for them to win the belts would have been at NXT TakeOver London.
Would have been any other time. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But NXT TakeOver London, they told a great story, and ultimately the Revival won those belts then, or held the belts rather, won the match, kept their belts, and that was pretty much the closest that Enzo and Big Cass were going to come to those belts. And it'll have to be a different babyface team that takes the belts off of the Revival.
That American Alpha.
My God, they are just. Oh God,
do you know how I feel about that match? I am
coming up.
Ready. Willing. Say the last part.
Gable.
I love it.
No, it's my last name. It's supposed to be my last name.
It's my last name.
He is incredible. Chad Gable is incredible.
Holy shit.
And what worries me so much about how over he is in NXT is that they might think that he's the next generation of NXT lifer. Just because of how over he is. It's something I've thought about it. He's so over NXT that they might, he might be an NXT champ at some point down the line, but that'd be as far as he goes. I hope they wouldn't because of what they did with Kurt Angle. He's the next Kurt Angle.
Yeah, but I
maybe
think,
even with more charisma.
That's true. I think a lot of that success is going to come from his work as part of American Alpha.
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely, I don't think I'd give him a singles run in NXT. I would call American Alpha up as a team, and then I would bust them up at some point on the main roster, and that's when you start to have him go after the Intercontinental title, have him then find his way into the WWE Championship picture. And
he's a guy that'll get cheered as a babyface or as a heel. You could turn him heel at some point, and he'd still be over. Mm-hmm. Anything else from NXT you want to touch on in terms of this week's show, as NXT aired tonight as we record this?
Yeah, so Asuka and Bayley took on All Red Everything, Nia Jax and Eva Marie. So that's going to be interesting coming out of this, because it feels like all the women's storylines are starting to, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but they're all starting to fracture, and everybody's kind of in orbit of this title, and I like that. And obviously Asuka's going to get the next shot, and we can debate whether they're going to take the title off Bayley.
Will Asuka win? Yeah.
Excuse me. But it's interesting. It's really interesting to see Alexa Bliss moving back into the title scene, and Emma, and Dana Brooke is going to be back in action soon. And, you've got Dana Brooke and Emma as a team. You've got Eva Marie and Nia Jax as a team. And there's just a lot you can do right now. Liv Morgan and Peyton Royce and Billie Kay are starting to show up more. We got the debut of Aaliyah. They're really starting to phase in a lot of this great women's talent. And I hope that they continue to keep NXT a destination for great women's wrestling, as it has been, regardless of whether or not Bayley is your standard bearer. I think you can put it on Asuka, you can put it on Emma. There's any number of things you can do. I don't think it's completely contingent on Bayley if they try hard enough.
So again, NXT, they continue to roll into their next big show, their next takeover show, coming up WrestleMania weekend down there in Dallas. We have a break scheduled here. When we come back, we'll speak with our guest this week, Miss Mollie Fitzpatrick, and her take on the old product that she knows, stuff she likes now, and we'll even get a little N64 reference in there as well. That's coming up in just a few, here on the Great American Cast. back here on the Great American Cast. Tanner Acebo, Gary Lannister, and we're now joined by our guest for the week, Miss Mollie Fitzpatrick. Mollie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. What an intro, huh? Holy. Fired up to be here.
So I guess we'll start you out with the typical question that we ask every guest on the show now, as this is our third episode. I guess we have kind of a routine that we go through. You're a wrestling fan. I know personally you're a wrestling fan from the older times. Who are some of your personal favorite wrestlers? Who are some of your influences, I guess you could say, in professional wrestling?
The biggest one, well, I guess he's not the biggest stature-wise, but the best one I'd have to say would be Rey Mysterio. You know, he was the one that I always liked. You know, he was the acrobatic one. He was small. He was feisty. He had the cool mask. He had the cool pants, everything like that, the gloves. And he was always one that I really liked because you never knew what he was going to do, but you just knew it was going to be pretty cool. So he was the biggest one that I always drew to whenever he was on. I didn't tune in that much week to week, but every time that I did flip it on or see it or whatever, I knew that he was going to be like the guy I was rooting for every time. Yeah, so little guy, but big fan base. 619.
Yeah.
Booyaka, booyaka.
Yeah. He really was great to watch. Do you have any other ones that you enjoyed watching? Now I know you and I have spoken a bit about the Master of the Batista Bomb.
Yes.
And it's interesting because you were watching wrestling in terms of this Batista stuff when I wasn't watching. Mm-hmm. So I know Batista of Blue Tista fame. You know, his last run where he was when they reformed Evolution and everything. But you like Batista from back, I guess, in his heyday.
Yes, I liked him fully tattooed back. He was, you know, pretty bland back there.
That's a good way to put it. It puts people right in line of the timeline.
You know, the fresh young guy coming in, and I guess it was, I don't know how far after Rey Mysterio it was, but it seemed like to me at the time that it was pretty chronological. Rey Mysterio kind of left, and then Batista came in, and Randy Orton came in, and Batista I liked way better than Randy Orton. He was this big jack guy, and he did, you know, the big demonstration, the fireworks, and he was just so demonstrative in who he was and all the motions that he did and everything like that, whereas you had Randy Orton, who was kind of this meek, smaller, I mean, he was still big, tall, and muscular and stuff, but he was kind of the, you know, the heel that you don't like, you know, and you're like, oh, I don't like him. You like Batista, who's the big and strong, and he was cool looking with the buzz cut or the bald head, and yeah, I liked him. He was big stuff, and he was pretty cool.
And this is a young Randy Orton, so he's not the Orton that people that are more familiar with the current product only would recognize as the guy, you know, that does the pose. He still did the pose.
He still
loved the pose.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Pose is a 10. So we've kind of hit some of, you know, your backstory. I've got a question for you. I mean, you watched a bit back then. Like I said, you didn't necessarily watch week to week, but you've been watching more, I guess, fluently.
Yep.
You know, in the last couple of months.
Yep.
What's your reaction to the current product? How do you feel? You know, what are the feelings you get when you watch wrestling? Or
I like it. When at the time way back when I was watching it, I didn't pay attention to the storyline or anything like that, whether it was super prominent back then or you know, I just didn't pick up on it. I don't know, but I remember the big entrances and then the moves. Those are the only things that I remember of, you know, the high acrobatic things and stuff like that. So coming and watching it now, you know, with the big storylines and all that kind of stuff, and you got, you know, Triple H is on the other side now as more of a manager and really stirring the pot as opposed to getting in there and actually wrestling. So that's different. So I think for me, coming back and watching it, it's been weird seeing those guys that I had always watched wrestling now kind of behind the scenes or pushing the younger wrestlers to like exploit their game, or not exploit their game, but, you know, expand their game and all that kind of thing. But from a like physically wrestling standpoint, it's, you know, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, and it's just, there's so much more that goes into it. It's not as basic and hardcore, I guess. There's a lot more theatrics with the explosions and the lights and the music and everything like that. So that's fun and entertaining to watch. But from full on like wrestling moves, like they don't have as much color. It's more, I think it's more set up more, I guess.
Yeah.
Staged.
Yeah.
You know, you can see more. I mean, I don't know if I didn't notice botched moves back then, but it seemed more real. Whereas nowadays it seems too much acting to me.
And that's you know. Yeah. You brought up color.
Yep.
Back in the Attitude Era, and you know, leading out of the Attitude Era into the Ruthless Aggression Era.
Oh yeah.
A lot of color that was going on. A lot of color, and we've talked about color before. And there is something that it brings to the product. Not that we advocate for people blading themselves or smashing their heads in it, but there is something to be said for it. And we saw them bring it back a few weeks ago, once again, with this Reigns angle, where they clearly knew that that color would try to get this guy over as a babyface. That if you saw him bleed, that you would associate with him. And again, this is another thing where we're talking to somebody that doesn't watch the product super regularly. Back to episode 1 with Stephen LeClaire, when he was talking about how his theory on Roman Reigns. You know, it's someone that's doesn't watch every week, that has this thing that we believe in as well, and we're the hardcore fans.
Mm-hmm.
So the casual fan thinks the same thing as the hardcore fan, and we're not necessarily getting it.
Yeah. They
did it with Reigns with the blood capsule and everything, but the color aspect is definitely a piece of making it feel authentic.
It definitely did in those old matches too, and I don't know if that's just because of the benefit of it being sort of a time where everyone's innocence was intact, and maybe you knew, oh, this is somewhat predetermined, but for the most part, people really took it seriously. That's why you had people storming the cage after, I believe it was Dusty and Flair, wasn't it?
Oh yes, back then, yeah.
So
and,
I mean,
it
just
Jim
added
Cornette
so
had
much
to have a bodyguard,
Yeah.
and people were getting stabbed, like people
keeping
had brought
horseshoes
knives.
in his tennis racket bag.
Yeah.
It just added a lot of drama to it that was pretty cool. So.
And now, Gary, I think you have a question that you were planning on asking as well.
So, you've been watching a lot of the pay-per-views with us, and we're finally starting to we're inching towards better representation for the women on the pay-per-views and on Raw. I don't know how much you remember from as recently as a year ago, how the storylines were all could be summed up, women are crazy. Mm-hmm. And they just attack each other because you stole my scrunchie, like that kind of thing. So we've moved on from that, and we've got these whole new great performers. We've got Paige, who hasn't been around lately, Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bayley's probably coming up anytime soon. Natalia. Oh.
Yes.
I love you if you're listening. So, yeah, we've really there's a lot of talent on that roster, and I think they're finally changing their storytelling as well. It's becoming slightly more complex. But we wanted to talk to you about that specifically. So, from a woman's perspective, how do you feel about the way that the women's wrestling is coming off? And how are these wrestlers? What's your impression of them?
Yeah, I think the more dynamic the story, I think the better overall experience it is. Because, like you said, you don't want to see... these feuds between, oh, well, she said this, or she said this, it's kind of like, is that real? Did that actually happen, or are they just fronting that? And you want to see something that's more believable, or more like, oh yeah, go and beat her up. How dare she do that, or how dare she say that, as opposed to, oh, she went and talked to whoever kind of thing.
Not the catty stuff.
Yeah.
It actually has roots. There are actual reasons for these people to feud with each other.
Right.
And it wasn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't mean to step on you answering the question, but particularly with Becky Lynch and Charlotte, we got a well-told story that was fought over something that mattered and was not gender-specific.
Right.
It was over honor.
Right.
It was the way Charlotte was choosing to win her matches, and Becky, being a true babyface and extremely honorable, had a problem with that.
Right.
So that's why I got behind that story. So I'd be curious to hear a little more about what you've maybe thought of the Charlotte storyline and Flair's involvement and Becky Sasha, just how it's coming across for you.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a pretty neat story in that, you have the generational aspect of the father to the daughter, so he's being protective of his daughter, but, she's also a fully grown adult and is in the field, so she needs to be able to defend herself and stand for what she stands for and not just, try to ride his tailcoat. And then conversely, being able to have someone compete against her in Becky Lynch, and I think that she's been a great fighter, or great wrestler, and she definitely plays her part well, and continues to uphold exactly what she's trying to call Charlotte out on. She has honor, she has pride, and she also wrestles like relatively clean. She's not doing the cheap shots behind the play or anything like that. So she's trying to command Charlotte to be better than what Charlotte actually is, and she's not being a hypocrite or anything like that. And I think those are the types of stories that viewers, whether you watch once a week or you watch all of them, you know what I mean, or once a month or whatever, I think those are the ones that you actually buy into, because it's more indicative of like human life. It's just like someone in the same office as you is, oh well, he's telling me to do this or she's telling me to do this. Well, they're not doing it themselves, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to have someone stabbing you behind the back. So I think I like those types of storylines that are way more realistic, and then it's brought out in the wrestling aspect.
The organic story.
Yep.
The good versus evil, but not necessarily evil in this case, but the good versus the bad.
Yep.
Cheating to win versus winning with honor, and winning with pride, and losing with class.
Right.
That's another thing that heels don't necessarily do nowadays, especially on the women's side, is beat down angles after losses.
Yeah.
We're obviously on the fast lane to WrestleMania. We have the Roadblock coming up this week, Triple H versus Dean Ambrose in the main event of that show. But also I want to ask you about WrestleMania. What are you most looking forward to? Because this is the show of shows, and this is probably the first WrestleMania you've watched where you've kind of really known all the storylines going into it. What most interests you about this year's WrestleMania?
I'm interested to see exactly what happens, and to be able to have more, like you said, more knowledge of kind of events leading up to it, and how they take all of those small little events and make a big show out of it. And I hope I'm not disappointed. I hope it like blows my mind and I'm like, oh, that was awesome. And and then how do they take that in the following weeks after WrestleMania and continue to make it that much better and prep for the next big event or big Raw night or anything like that, and they don't just kind of like let it slide for a couple weeks or anything like that. You want to maintain that viewership, and I'm excited to actually know Dean Ambrose, Triple H, that whole feud, and see a couple of their bouts, and then Shane-O coming back, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be cool to have kind of full circle, and then see how they carry that out from here on out, or from there on out.
Did we ask favorite current wrestlers yet?
No, it's the next one.
Oh, sorry, I jumped the gun.
He's excited.
He's ready. Go ahead.
Yeah, so who are some of the people on the roster? I think it's particularly talking about WrestleMania and what we hope to see and what's coming up. So who are some of your favorites that are working right now?
Right now, recently, I liked Neville the other night in Raw. I thought he was fantastic. He's similar. He reminds me of Rey Mysterio in that he's acrobatic and he's athletic, and I don't know, he's just a lot of fun to watch. He does those backflips and all. I don't even know the full terminology, but off the middle rope. And,
the 450.
Oh, yeah,
that was awesome. And you're like, okay, like, it's not just a regular guy that goes in the ring and does what he does. Like, he actually crafts it and works at it, and has spent however many hours trying to figure out that one move, and then he gets to perform it. So I like that aspect of him. And then Daniel Bryan's a classic, so unfortunately he's out. But I've always been a big John Cena fan, and but Triple H is a heel, but he's pretty good at what he does, so you can't.
He's timeless, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you can't. He's good at what he does, whether he's good or bad. He's entertaining. But yeah, I think I would say probably Neville. I don't know why.
So
he's just fun.
Put on the display. Yeah.
Well, there's talk that I don't know if it's going to be a ladder match, but they're talking about doing a multi-man match for the Intercontinental title, and I think he's in the mix for that. I think it's Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Neville. Talk of Prince Pretty. Yeah. I don't know who else. Miz and Ziggler, I think, are the other two.
I could see Ziggler being in there just because it feels like whenever they have a multi-person match, or whenever they need someone to just put into a feud for the Intercontinental belt, it's Dolph Ziggler. Yeah. I have a bit more specific question from what Gary just asked you. Who is your favorite women's wrestler on the roster? They call them divas. We prefer to
Women's
call them
wrestlers.
Yeah.
Probably Becky Lynch.
Yes.
She's pretty.
Yes.
You know, if you didn't have like males wrestling or whatever, and you just had females wrestling, you'd be like, okay, that's a wrestler. You know, you wouldn't be like, oh, she's a girl trying to go and wrestle, and you know, she's not, you know, like the Barbie shape of you know, toothpick and then fake everything. You know, she is a full on woman, and you know, she goes out and crushes it in any way that she can, which is pretty exciting. So I would say her, and she's got cool hair, so and she's Irish, so why not?
You know, she checks all the boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the transition they've made from the Attitude Era to now. Again, I mean...
Yeah, matches that you win when you rip off each other's clothes, you know?
Right.
Yeah, Brian Payne's matches to now actual wrestling matches, and
Right.
Gary and myself were at NXT Brooklyn, not to put ourselves over or anything like that, but to see Sasha and Bayley in one of the best matches that's
What a
ever
moment.
been wrestled. That wasn't a women's match, that was a wrestling match.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And to now see it begin to, the ripple effect from NXT to the main roster, and obviously Becky, Charlotte, Sasha all coming up, and eventually Bayley will come up, hopefully. Maybe
Reunite the
even-
horsewomen.
Yeah, maybe even this Mania season, who knows?
Yeah.
Can I jump in and ask, speaking of your boy Triple H, where do you fall with Roman Reigns?
To be honest, I haven't seen him do much, really.
Mm.
You know, the only time I was really aware of him was in, oh god. When he got put on the stretcher and... He was
The Rumble.
Rumble, thank you. God, I was going
okay.
to say SummerSlam, but it wasn't SummerSlam. You know, and it was like this big to-do that he was going to be the guy going in, and he was in first, and then, boom, he was gone for 20 minutes. You know, and I'm like, okay, well, if he's supposed to be that good, like, why can't he last in there that long? I understand that they want him to, you know, not die in there, but...
Well, as someone that's a pro wrestler, you should be able to, if they're gonna make him the Iron Man,
he's got to last.
yeah.
Other people
You know what I mean?
have done it before
Yeah.
him. Punk
Ric
and
Flair did it.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
for God's sake. And that was not Ric Flair in his prime.
The 60-minute man.
Yeah, and he did it. So, yeah, it's interesting to see them, how they carted him out, the way they treated him in that Rumble,
Right.
only to then have him just get dumped by Triple H.
Right.
Because that's the problem. At least it seems like from everyone we've talked to, and now here again, it's the way he's booked. It's not necessarily him.
Right, exactly. I mean, I didn't really get the chance to see him actually perform because he was in there for, whatever, 5-6 guys, and then he was in the corner, I remember him on the ropes, and then, boom, out on the stretcher, and then you're like, oh, okay, he must... I mean, and I didn't know that he would come back. I was like, okay, he must be done. And then he comes back, and then, Triple H comes out, and
because
you're like, okay, well, he
the
was
League of
screwed to
Nations-
begin with.
yeah.
Yeah.
The League of Nations pulled him out under the bottom rope,
Right.
which is the dumbest thing ever. Because in the same Royal Rumble, we saw the Wyatt family take out Brock Lesnar over the top rope. So you've done the same thing with two different people,
Right.
and they've abandoned the fucking Bray Wyatt Brock Lesnar thing, and they're feeding it to us at Roadblock now, just because they need to fill a card out. But yeah, the fact that Roman Reigns, there's something going back to what they did in December with him, and how they made you invest in him, and he won the belt, and it was the best thing ever on Raw, and then eventually he lost it, and they just stopped telling his story, and that's why the fans have turned on him, because there's no reason to cheer for him, other than the fact that we know that he's going to be the guy. And I don't know if that's conscious on their part. They're like, people know he's going to be the guy, so they'll cheer for him. They'll cheer for him eventually.
But that's the thing, is they should have quit while they were fucking ahead, because he was over and he had the belt on him.
Yes.
So I know you want to crown him at WrestleMania with some kind of marquee match. Let him defend it in a marquee match.
Let
You
him
can
beat
have-
Lesnar clean.
Yeah.
Let Lesnar
You
win
want
the
him
Rumble.
to do that anyway. That's the story you could have told. Lesnar wins the Rumble. You do that.
Well, and it's so much more real.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Instead of being a roller coaster of like, okay, well, we're going to take it away here
Yeah.
at this big match, and then we'll make him win at the big one.
Exactly. Like you said, they got him over. Fucking Philadelphia cheered for him when he won that belt. And they booed him out of the building at last year's Royal Rumble. And they're so blind because they want to make WrestleMania the huge babyface wins the belt moment. I feel like they're trying to just recreate Daniel Bryan all over again.
Yep.
Which they tried to do last year, and the crowd revolted on it. And that's why they had Seth Rollins cash in. So they keep trying to make Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. It doesn't have to happen at WrestleMania. They made him organically in the way that he beat the shit out of Triple H after TLC. And my God, he Superman punched Vince McMahon, and he won that belt on Raw, and it was in Philadelphia, and they went insane.
But wouldn't that have been a better story? To have him hold on to his belt while people like that he has it?
Yes, exactly.
And then, like we say, Lesnar wins the Rumble, and that's your story is he's going to die. Lesnar would have had that match won if it hadn't been for Seth Rollins.
Exactly.
So he's going to take Roman's belt. He's going to leave Roman in a pile of his own blood, vomit, and urine.
You can still have Brock
That's a
Lesnar
great
do
moment
the
when he
beatdown angle.
wins.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's an even bigger moment when Roman wins. So no, he doesn't win the belt from someone, but he kept it. That's as good as a win. That's as good as winning it off someone else because no one gave you the odds going into this match. So it has the same emotional effect as it does to have him win the fucking thing. I don't know. It's just short-sighted storytelling.
It's because they knew where they wanted to go. WrestleMania 32, Reigns wins the belt. And then they went where kind of the story took them because they don't long-term plan. They don't long-term book. So you have Reigns getting over as the champion. Oh shit, we have to get the belt off Reigns so he can then win it at the place that we booked him to win it before we booked him to win it on Raw in December. Like, it's so maddening. But the guy was over and they fucked him all up.
Yeah.
You could still have Brock Lesnar just destroy him in the same exact angle what Triple H did, and you can get the blood back in it, and you can get the attitude back in it. You can get the fans on the outside like, oh man, hey, last year they fought for the belt, and the guy with the Money in the Bank briefcase interfered, and he won it. This year, there's no briefcase to be had. It's already been cashed in. You know that the belt will be decided in this match. You can even work that into the story, and they didn't even get that far.
No.
Now that I think of it, that really pisses me off, because the belt, the Money in the Bank briefcase, is not in play at WrestleMania this year. And that was something they hinged on last year, the whole show. Getting back here to Mollie Fitzpatrick, our guest this week.
I would just like to point out that was 4 minutes of this fucking company. And
now we're
oh
back.
yes, Molly. I
As
have
a-
that bran muffin recipe.
As a former college athlete, how do you relate to, I guess, what these WWE superstars do in the ring? What athletically can you kind of relate to?
I would say their recovery time is pretty remarkable. Playing collegiate sports and, you play one... I mean, I didn't play football, but obviously. Honestly.
What did you
so
play?
when I played football...
Let the audience know.
So I played hockey and lacrosse
All
collegiately. And so, we would do 2 games a week in hockey, and you get pretty banged up, and I can't imagine having a 300-pound person throw me around the ring Monday night, and then you train again for the next show, where you're probably getting thrown around a bit more, and then boom, you're right back in Monday night getting thrown around even more. I don't know.
And house shows too. They do house shows.
Right.
Wednesdays, Thursdays, Friday. So,
I can't imagine the toll it takes on your body, and to be able to, not just throw people around, but to be able to do huge lifts and acts and be able to do it correctly so you don't hurt each other even worse. Just the normal wear and tear of being sore from a little bit of whiplash, or even just like banging your arm on the stairs or whatever they do, chuck each other's faces into the stairs. I don't know how they, obviously they're professionals and everything like that, but still, even if you do it a little bit wrong, you're going to be feeling that for a while. So that's the biggest thing that I'm always like, oh my gosh, how did, he just did whatever to him, and he's going to stand right back up, or, come out tomorrow and not be limping around like an old man. So that's probably one of the biggest thing that's is like, whoa. But then the other thing is just the overall physicality of some of them is just insane. Our understanding of the human body's come so far in 50 years even, and even in the past 20 years. You look at the statures of the guys in the 90s and everything like that, and just the muscle tones, and now you have the guys like Batista that were massive, and then you have the Rey Mysterios that were smaller, but they were muscular a bit. Neville, yeah. And so you have these huge disparities of one, height. They're just a lot more massive human beings. But then also, you know, they're eating correctly, they're working out correctly, they're building their bodies like a bodybuilder, but also being able to move in ways that they need to be able to move. So it's definitely science, which is pretty neat. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's art encompassing the human body, I guess.
I like that.
I like that a lot.
Boom.
Yeah, I like that. That's very poetic.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, first off, if you have any social media plugs you want to toss out there for any of the listeners, anything like that, you can take this space to do so.
Nope.
None.
Yeah.
You can follow Mitch at Burrito Package. Also, you can follow us at Great USA Cast, Facebook.com/GreatUSAcast. On YouTube,
That's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to
Great
steal
USA
your
Cast.
storm.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's fine. Now, before we let you go,
Okay.
who was your favorite character to play as on WCW NWO World Tour for the N64? And people, if you haven't played it, my God, what are you doing with your life? I have a copy of it. I think I have 2 copies of it. I'm not much of a loser.
Wow.
Who you got?
Well, I put in a lot of hours playing this game. I think this is primarily where my wrestling interest started, because I was like, okay, well, these are fun. Like, they're jumping off ropes and all this fun stuff and pinning each other. And so primarily, I mean, I liked Rey Mysterio, who's my favorite guy, so he was in the game, so I used him a bit. But primarily, I used Dean Malenko. I don't know why, but I always ended up with him. He was
of
good.
1,000 holds.
He was awesome.
Ace
he was
Man.
the best one in the game, I thought.
Still works for them. Does
he really?
He books matches, yeah.
Dean Malenko.
Yeah.
Good work, pal. He always had the fun, different colors, and I also liked playing with Sting. Sting had a bunch of different face paints, which was cool.
Yeah. And the bat.
Yes.
Until you got hit and you dropped it.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, there goes that. Why did I pick him? No, but Dean Malenko was good.
Down C, into the corner.
Yes.
With Sting. You hit the B button. You just crush people.
I
Come
used
on.
to use the D-pad as well.
Yeah, you had to
easier
use the D-pad. Yeah, because the control stick did your
exactly.
taunts. A simpler time.
Yes.
Back then. A simpler time. Molly, we thank you so much for sitting down with us this week and joining us on the Great American Cast. We're going to go ahead and step away. And when we come back, Gary and I sat down and played a new game that we would not suggest for anybody else. It's called Russo Roulette, and we'll tell you what we watched and why it sucked after this. Back on the Great American Cast, you just heard the shitty theme for WCW Mayhem 2000, and we will play our first game of Russo Roulette this week. Again, we thank Mollie Fitzpatrick for joining us in that segment that you just listened to. Russo Roulette is a game that was conceived by Gary and myself several months ago. It involves picking a random Vince Roulette written WCW pay-per-view.
Or Vince Russo, you mean?
Yeah, did I say Vince Roulette?
Vince Roulette, yeah.
God damn it, I hate everything. Vince Russo. Vince Roulette. It's a better name than Vince Russo.
It is.
That's neither here nor there.
Here's the thing, bro.
A Vince Roulette written/produced pay-per-view on the WWE Network, and this time the roulette wheel, the ball, landed on WCW Mayhem 2000, which emanated from the Wisconsin Center Arena in Milwaukee on November 26, 2000. The announced attendance was 3,800. That is down over 10,000 from Mayhem 99 at the Air Canada Center. That drew 13,839 by their official number. All right, people. We obviously don't have the time to sit down and watch this whole fucking show. Nor would I want anybody to have to sit down and watch this whole show. The way that Gary and I do this is we usually pick the last 3 matches on the show. We watch the opening, the opening montage, the opening video package, whatever you want to call it, and then we watched the last 3 matches. And on this one, we're just going to talk about 2 of the last 3 matches because Goldberg ripped Lex Luger's bones off his body in the other one, and nobody benefited or gave a fuck. At this point, in 2000, you had the team of the Insiders, Kevin Nash and Diamond Dallas Page. They were baby faces, but they were... The Insiders, the connotation, they were breaking a lot of kayfabe at this point, be it by the broadcast team or by the literal terms that they were using to describe their teams. And they took on the Perfect Event, Chuck Palumbo and Sean Stasiak, 2 of the young guns, 2 guys that were really talented at this point, to be honest, and a guy in Sean Stasiak that was very kind of undervalued by WWF in his whole meat bullshit nonsense. So Stasiak and Palumbo are the champions going into this match. These guys, they put on a 15-minute match. It goes 14:55. And, the Insiders work as baby faces in this match. And to the point where, and I'm honest to God, I was rooting for them by the time this match was over. This is classic psychology. I think it was DDP that was just getting the shit beat out of him for the longest time. Then Kevin Nash gets the hot tag. He runs in, it's the 5 moves of doom. And the Insiders take the tag belts off the Young Guns, and the 3,800 people in the building go insane. But Gary, I guess this could be one of the, I wouldn't say a catalyst, but like a microcosm of what was wrong with WCW at this point, is that you have the young guys, they had the belts, they're working heel. I can't recall what happened in the pay-per-view after this one, but they dropped the belts to the older guys at this point, and Kevin Nash and Diamond Dallas Page, who are 2 of the old guard, who were kind of, just smashed together, but you're in this weird WCW early 2000s era, and you've established the Young Guns, the New Blood, as they were called. There are many different names that were used to describe these young guys, but Palumbo and Stasiak look good in this match. They put the other guys over clean, but I just, want kind of some general ideas for you, as once again, in WCW in the 2000s, the old guys win.
Yeah, like you said, you popped when the baby faces won.
Yeah.
How much more would you have popped if a babyface team comprised of young athletes had taken the belts off of Stasiak and Palumbo after a long run as dirtbag heels? But no, instead you blow that moment and you blow that opportunity on a bunch of dudes who've been to the show before. It's the same fucking bullshit they were always pulling.
And earlier on this show, you had Rey Mysterio Jr. and Billy Kidman beat Alex Wright and Chronic in a handicap match. And those are 2 guys, Mysterio Jr. and Kidman, not the youngest guys, but those are 2 guys that you would think could have definitely put on a hell of a match with the Perfect Event. So we're already off to a bad start with this Russo Roulette. And folks, we've watched many of these shits, but we'll go back and we'll watch some more for you. This is just the most recent one that we watched, so we'll be back with more. But again, as I said, Goldberg, beat Luger in a nothing match, and then this is really what we're getting down to: is Scott Steiner, the challenger, with Madeja, versus Booker T, the WCW World Heavyweight Champion, in a straitjacket steel cage match for the belt. And this wasn't just any normal cage match. This was Caged Heat, which was their ripoff of Hell in a Cell. So it was Caged Heat.
Which sounds like a fucking Jamiroquai song.
Yeah, it sounds like something you'd buy in the dollar store next to, like, canned peaches.
Yeah, it's like an antifungal thing you put on your chalk.
Caged Heat. And the point of this match, and the announce team, Tony Schiavone, Mark Madden, and was it Mike Tenay, or was it Scott what's-his-face? I don't fucking know.
Could have been the fucking janitor for all I know.
Might as well have been. And at this point, Hacksaw Jim Duggan was mired in his terrible janitor gimmick as well.
Oh, Christ.
As you bring up janitor. But they say that it's a straitjacket caged heat match. The straitjacket it's hanging in the cage off the rafters of it. But putting the straitjacket on your opponent doesn't win you the match. And I had actually hypothetically kind of asked that question as we were going into this match. Like, oh, is that you put this? You have to subdue them enough to put the straitjacket on them.
And the cage functions so that you beat the crap out of each other. You can't
You're
go
confined.
anywhere.
You can't run away.
Exactly. So that exists as a means to contain you. It's the parameter in which you go for the straitjacket to end the match.
And it's almost, and not to like say that I'm smart or anything, but it's a logical conclusion to take. You beat the guy down enough so you can put the straitjacket on him and the match ends.
Yeah, that would make a ton of fucking sense.
But they literally fucking say over and over again, you don't have to use the straitjacket to win the match. It's just in there.
It's a nice piece of clothing to wear.
Yeah. So Booker T can just pin Scott Steiner any time. Straitjacket doesn't even come down off the coat hanger that it's on, and the match is over. This goes 13 minutes 10 seconds. At one point, Booker T does get the straitjacket on Scott Steiner, but what does he do? He just shreds it because he's terrifying Scott Steiner.
And keep in mind, we love Scott Steiner.
Yes.
Big old Papa Pump Mark.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
But it just... what the fuck was the point?
So it ends with Scott Steiner slapping the Steiner recliner on poor Booker T. And Steiner, your heel, walks out with the belt. Again, this is WCW. This is an arena where you only have 3,800 people. And they have the heel taking the belt. And Scott Steiner held this belt for a long time, as I recall, in this late era of WCW.
Coming out of this pay-per-view? Or?
Yeah, I think he held the belt until the last Monday Night Nitro where Booker T beat him for the belt. I really think that's how long this run goes for Steiner with the belt.
How close? What year? What month did this take place?
This is November 26th, 2000.
And when did WCW fold?
It was in 2001. But I mean, unless he dropped it once and then got it back. But Booker T definitely won the belt from him at the last Monday Nitro.
Because it's all kind of a clusterfuck. If you can find it, you can find it. You just have to go on Amazon. Wrestle Crap and Figure 4 Weekly's The Death of WCW, Brian Alvarez, and forgive me, but I can't remember the name of his co-writer. That's a pretty great detailing of just how many times the titles changed hands in the last couple days of WCW. I feel like it was from Page to Nash to Booker to Steiner, like a million, every time you turned around.
I don't want to put myself up, but I was right. He beats Booker T for that title, and on November 26th, and then he feeds Booker T over several months and pay-per-views until losing the title back to him on the final episode of Nitro on March 26th, 2001.
So, okay, so if that was at the end of 2000.
Yeah, November 2000. But they had been juggled around a lot.
Yeah,
but keep in mind, Bash at the Beach 2000 was just a few months earlier, and that's your notorious Hogan Russo nonsense bullshit, which they cover extensively in that book. Which again, I could not recommend more, especially as somebody who was a huge WCW mark and a huge pro wrestling fan, and then reading that and the style of the way that they write it and everything is really
bringing
so
up Terry
good.
Funk fighting the horse too is my personal Easter egg favorite. You fucking horse! I'll kick your fucking ass.
So Steiner wins the belt, and a true Russo event it was indeed. We're approaching the end of this week's show, and we thank you very much for tuning in. Looking ahead to next week, we have a new group of guests coming in, or it will be at least one of them. We're not sure if we'll be joined by both of them. We'll be joined by one of the Matz brothers, one of the Brothers of Destruction. It might be two, it might be one. So just be prepared for that. And be prepared to turn up your headphone volume, because there could be some mumbling going on here on the Great American Cast. But Gary, another week has come and gone, and I guess we're gonna have to sit down at some point and watch 3 more fucking matches from Vince Russo's pay-per-views, because now we've talked about it on this show, and now it's gonna be a fucking regular segment.
Locked in now. We gotta do that. We gotta watch Roadblock. I gotta catch up on Lucha Underground. I'd really like to start talking about that.
Yeah, I'm still on episode 3 of season 1. Sorry for those of you that are huge Lucha Underground marks. Love the show.
Yeah.
Love the broadcast. Production value is awesome. I really like Matt Stryker and Vampiro as a broadcast team.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something different. It's a breath of fresh air. But hopefully have some time to watch some more of that.
You got a week off coming up. So
I do,
maybe
yeah.
We should dig in and get ourselves further.
Plenty of time.
Chronicle that marathon on the podcast.
For another week. Yeah, hopefully next week we'll be able to talk some serious lucha and maybe even some ROH. If anything more comes out of the TV tapings there. TNA, we don't know what the hell's going on.
No. Do you want to do our social media plugs one more time?
Yeah. We're on Facebook, The Great USA Cast. Facebook.com/Great USA Cast. Twitter, @Great USA Cast. We're on YouTube, The Great American Cast. And we invite you to like us, to comment. Give us some talking points if you want. We're hoping to start a new poll segment coming out in the next couple weeks. We want to make sure we have enough people out there that we can reach to get some poll numbers that would really be relevant. It's not just one person voting yay or nay, and we get it, Well, one guy thinks that Hogan is definitely guilty, even though Hogan is not the one that's on trial here. So again, more Hogan sex details next week. That's not enough of a stinger.
We'll have trial details. Yeah. Hopefully not too many sex details.
We'll be talking about Roadblock and what other directions they have going into Mania out of that. Also, of course, Raw coming up after Roadblock next week. Even some more NXT spoilers to talk about. And another round of Russo Roulette. And we're joined by at least one of the Brothers of Destruction. The Barry Brothers of Destruction. Two of the OG WWF fans going way, way back. That's next week on the Great American Cast. He's Gary Lannister. I'm Tanner Acebo. We thank you for tuning in, and once again, we'll let the talking heads take you home.